This is the Sales Gravy Podcast. Hi, I'm Jeb Blunt, best-selling author of Fanatical Prospecting, Objections, Sales EQ, and Inked, and I'm here to help you open more doors, close bigger deals, and rock your commission check. Welcome back to Ask Jeb on the Sales Gravy Podcast. On this segment, it's all about you. It's your agenda, your biggest challenges, your biggest roadblocks. You ask me questions, I give you my best answers. And by the way, those answers are coming from a place of experience. I'm not one of those people that couldn't sell my way out of a paper bag, but I want to tell you how to do it. I do the same job you do every single day. I'm in the trenches, I'm in the grind, and I recognize that sales is hard. It's long stretches of pain interrupted by a few brief moments of elation. So bring me your questions. If you want to be on the show, go to salesgravy.com/ask. That's salesgravy.com/ask. Fill out the form, and one of our amazing producers will get in touch with you and get you scheduled on the show. I can't wait to hear from you. All right, let's get started. Next up is Ron from Dallas-Fort Worth, the great state of Texas. Ron, I spent a lot of time in Texas this past year working with clients. What's going on in Texas?
Well, we always have two things that are consistent here, traffic and heat.
And the occasional ice storm that shuts everything down, right?
Yes. You have to be formidable to handle the conditions, if you will. But I'll tell you what I'm calling, Jeb. I've got a recruiting business, and I just remain confounded about how many CEOs actually answer the phone, or should I say don't answer, in the myriad of tools out there to help me prospect. My head is spinning. Do I just need to make more calls nowadays, or is there a next best method I can add to my processes to kind of complement but not replace my calling? I'm really good at execution, but when I go 0 for 30, I start to kind of doubt my process.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a great question, and it's a question we're getting a lot right now. And there's a couple of things that are happening in sales. One of those is that AI came online about 2 years ago, and there's been a lot of tech entrepreneurs that have been trying to replace prospecting with robots. And the problem is that robots can prospect relentlessly 24/7. It's creating a lot of noise. And that noise is leading to something called the great ignore. And that is that prospects, in particular executives, are essentially just ignoring all prospecting messages. So in order to stand out, you got to differentiate. But let me ask you a quick question. The CEOs that you're calling, what size companies are you calling into?
I used to limit myself to 50 to 200 employees. But with lack of success, I've broadened that to some of the bigger companies because of the niche that I serve in the recruiting business.
Essentially, what you want to think about is you're calling into a CEO. Now, I'm a CEO of a company that has about 30 employees, so we're a little smaller than what you would typically be calling into. But when recruiters call me about executives or executive recruiting, I'm sometimes interested if I'm hiring someone for that particular role. If I'm not hiring someone for that role, or I don't have an opening, I'm not interested. So I'm probably going to ignore you. I'm not going to respond. It's also very, very hard for anybody to reach me because I've got enough gatekeepers surrounding me that I'm typically not answering a lot of calls. Now, with that said, not a lot of people call me, and if I am available, I will answer. So I do take some prospecting calls. But if you were to reach deeper into my organization, say my chief operating officer, that person is really interested in hiring because my COO is far more involved in the day-to-day business and more the leader of our leaders, as well as our human resource leader. That person is interested, and because I put pressure on her to do recruiting or to look for people. And we definitely use recruiters, and especially executive recruiters, when we're trying to find top people. So multi-threading says there are multiple people inside the organization and multiple paths in to have the conversation with the CEO or with people in the organization that can make decisions. Going straight to the top is always a good strategy. It's there was a book a long time ago called Selling the Veto, which meant selling to very important top officers. In other words, going straight to the top. But if you can use a top-down, bottom-up strategy, in a lot of cases, it gives you a better chance of getting the right people. And I'll give you a quick example of this. I've got a client of mine that's in the software industry, and they sell enterprise-level software, really high-level software, and these are big purchases. So these deals are anywhere from $5 to $20 million deals. So really big. The only person that's making a decision about these things is the CEO. But if we're calling the CEOs directly, it's very hard to get the CEOs to pay attention to us because A, the CEOs don't really care about it in that moment. It's not something that they think about every single day. And B, they're very hard to get to. So what we've deployed with this organization is a top-down, bottom-up strategy. In other words, we're calling the CEO and we're leaving messages and we're sending emails and we're educating them through a sequence of messages. But at the same time, we're talking to people in the organization that are actually impacted by this software. And we're gathering insight from the organization that we then use and leverage in our messages back to the CEO. So one strategy that you can use is this multi-threading strategy where you try to work multiple angles or multiple paths into the organization, having conversations with different people who can give you different levels of information. And then, and this is important, let's just say you have a conversation with someone in the organization that says, yes, we have a need for a VP of sales, or we have a need for this type of person. You can gather information about the person they're looking for. Then you have the opportunity to call the CEO. Now, they might not answer, but you can leave a voice message. And that voice message may say, I understand that you're looking for this type of person. I have a candidate right now that would be perfect for you, and I want to get this person in front of you. Let's talk. Then you can drive that through an email. You can leave that as a voice message on LinkedIn. You can also do a video message on LinkedIn. You can send them a handwritten note and a card. You could send them maybe even a resume where you've got the person's name and information blacked out, but you put it into a handwritten note to the CEO. And in some cases, especially if you're doing recruiting directly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you're calling on this type of a company, these smaller organizations, 50 to 100 people, you should be able to even walk through the door and go have a conversation with them. And then you might want to find out where these CEOs are going to be. Then what you're doing now is you're building a sequence of touches using a different set of messages along the way that allows you to differentiate and grab their attention. And that's really the most important thing. You're trying to get their attention. But I don't want to ignore the fact that because you're selling recruiting, and you're going to the CEO, if the CEO doesn't have an immediate drive to use a recruiter to fill a position, they're most likely going to ignore you unless you give them a compelling reason to have a conversation with you now before that buying window opens up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's all good advice, and I like the idea of a multi-touch strategy. And from that, you can also glean, what else is going on in the company that you can reference when you do communicate with them. I like it.
Well, let me ask you another question. So I understand you sit down, you call 30 CEOs, you don't get any response at all. That totally makes sense to me that can drive you crazy. Are you leaving a voice message on each of those calls?
I've debated that, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But I think I've gotten maybe one call back out of hundreds and hundreds of messages that I left. So yes and no.
Okay, so I want to encourage you to leave a voice message because it's like, the Wayne Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. There's no way they're going to call you back if you don't leave a message. And especially with CEOs in these days, the way we use our cell phones and the way we use our VoIP voice over internet protocol. When you leave a voice message, it transcribes the message and it sends us an email. On a cell phone, if you're calling the person's mobile phone, which you should be doing when you can, it's going to give a transcription of the voice message. So voice messaging in today's world is almost like an email or a text message. And so you want to make sure that you're leaving a voice message so they can hear you. Now, when you leave a voice message, I want you to think about a couple of things. It needs to be short, to the point, and compelling. Short means that you're going to be less than 30 seconds and get straight to the point. And compelling means that you're giving them a compelling reason to call you back. Now, if you knew that they had a opening, let's just say that you saw on LinkedIn that they were looking for a chief revenue officer, for example, then compelling would be, I've got a person that would fit you perfectly. I've been working my network, I have a person there. And in recruiting, that's an easy way in because it is compelling. And then once you can talk to them and learn a little bit more about them, you can make a decision whether or not the candidates that you currently have in your pipeline would be right for them or not, or if it makes sense to flip that into a longer term agreement where you go out and find a different person for them. You want to leave a message that grabs their attention and causes them to want to call you back. I also want you to think about your voicemail messages as a 30-second commercial that allows you to have a conversation with them. So if you call and leave a voice message and then you call again, let's say the next week and you leave a voice message, you have the ability over the series of 5 or 10 voice messages to connect with them in a different way, to tell your story in a different way, to even talk about other businesses that you've helped and how you've helped them. If you start thinking about a voice message as a conversation with the CEO, it gets a lot different. And over time, they hear your message. I'll give you an example of this. There was a company that was calling me this summer that was a cybersecurity company. I got a call and then the person left a voice message. Now, the call went to my mobile phone because in my business, our voice over internet protocol phone system hooks into everybody's cell phones. So I got the voice message and I read the voice message. And at the time, I was interested in cybersecurity. And by the way, this is not a license for everybody who sells cybersecurity to call me tomorrow. I was just interested in it because we had been doing some training with our team on cybersecurity. So when I saw it, it piqued my interest. But I was heading out on a Friday afternoon on vacation. But I made a note to myself, hey, I'm going to call this person back. I got an email on Sunday. They clearly scheduled an email reminding me again that this person was out there. I needed to call them. And I promised myself on Monday that I was going to reach back out to them. Monday came, Monday morning hit, all the things that happened on Monday morning hit us, and I forgot all about it. And this person called me again. And when they called me again, I saw the name and the phone number pop up on my phone, and I knew who it was. And I answered the phone and had a conversation with them. Now, that was a 3-part sequence where they left a message, sent an email, and then called me again. But it worked to get my attention, and they ended up getting an appointment with us. So you want to think about your voice messages, your emails, all of those things, interconnecting all those messages so that you are telling your story and having some faith that they're either reading or listening to your voice message. And even if that doesn't cause them to call you back now, it does get you into their brain. And that brings me to really my final piece of advice, and that's this. And I don't know that this is you, Ron, so I'm not saying that you're doing this, but a lot of people will call and they'll say, I made 30 calls and I didn't get anything from it. So they made all the calls and then they never called them again, or they called those same people 30 days from now or 90 days from now or 2 months from now. And that can become a problem as well, because if you think about the cybersecurity person, voice message, then 2 days later, email, and then called me again. And I suspect that they would have probably continued to call me every other day until they'd gotten my attention. So you want to make sure that you're running those touches relatively close to each other over a certain period of time. And I would recommend that if you're targeting a CEO and you're going in with a compelling message, think about running a sequence that would say work over, say, a 30-day period or maybe even a 60-day period, so that maybe you're going to do, say, maybe 9 or 10 touches over that period of time through different medium to get their attention. But then I go back to multi-threading. If you can find that there is a compelling reason for them to work with you, then it gets a lot easier, because what you're doing with those lower level touches is you're looking for open buying windows. Those open buying windows would tell you that in those cases, when there is an open buying window, you need to compress that sequence down to even a 14-day sequence where you're hitting them every single day, because there's a compelling reason for them at that moment to talk to you, because they have an open position, an open rec, they have a need on their team, they're expanding, they're growing, and they need you at that moment, because you're the person that can get them the executive that's going to help them take their business to the next level.
Good stuff, Jeb. Always.
Cool. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Ron, for coming on the Sales Gravy podcast, and let us know how things go. All right.
I surely will. Have a great day.
You too. Talk to you later. I'm sure Ron's question resonated with so many people in the audience that are struggling to break through and get attention in a noisy world. So I hope that this question and the answer maybe gave you some inspiration or something to think about, or got you started down a path that will help you get in more doors and sell more. And if you've got a question you want to ask me, go to salesgravy.com/ask, salesgravy.com/ask. If you would prefer not to be on the show, but you still like me to answer your question, you can mark that on the form on the website. And do me a favor. If you like this podcast, if it's giving you value, if you're sending it to other people, if you're sharing it with your team, go to your podcast app and give us a 5-star rating. It literally takes 3 seconds on Apple and Spotify, and it's a huge favor because it moves us up in the algorithm and it helps other people find us. I'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy podcast. And remember, when it's time to go home, when you're ready to give up, when you're tired and you're worn out, always make one more call.